So good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you all for coming to today's press conference. The purpose of this press conference is to provide you with information concerning the culmination of Operation Benchwarmer, a large-scale joint investigation between the Athens Clarke County Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, operating under the oversight of the U.S. Attorney's Office and focused on Athens Clarke County's most egregious and violent high-level gun traffickers and drug dealers. Before I get into the details of Operation Benchwarmer, I want to pause for a minute and thank the many federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies that contributed to the success of this operation. With more than 300 representatives from federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, Operation Benchwarmer represents the largest scale and most successful criminal operation of its nature in the history of Athens Clarke County Police Department. There are too many departments to name for me to try to name all of them, so I won't try because I know I'll miss somebody. You have a list, or you have been provided with a list that includes all of the agencies that participated, but I do want to take time to acknowledge and thank the U.S. Attorney from the Middle District of Georgia, led by Mr. Charles Peeler, for the involvement and oversight provided by his office throughout the investigation. I also want to especially acknowledge and thank the Supervisory Senior Resident Agent in Charge, Andy Smith, who heads the Middle District, Georgia Federal Bureau of Investigations Office, and Resident Agent in Charge, Harold Hurley, who heads the Macon District Office for DEA. We could not have been successful without their partnership, without their resources, and without their expertise, and I'm truly glad that they were willing to partner with us in this operation. Operation Benchwarmer began in the summer of 2019 when the Athens Clarke County Police Department began to focus on addressing gun violence in our communities. Members of our Safe Streets Task Force began identifying and building cases against Athens Clarke County's most violent and high-level gun traffickers and drug dealers. As I mentioned earlier, we were quickly joined in this investigative effort by the FBI and by DEA. Between the summer of 2019 and early January 2020, Athens Clarke County investigators, FBI agents, and DEA agents logged countless hours investigating, developing evidence, and building federal cases against some of the most notorious gun traffickers and drug dealers in the Athens area. The investigation led to federal indictments against 17 of these individuals. Operation Benchwarmer culminated on the morning of Tuesday, January 21st, when more than 300 federal, state, and local law enforcement agents amassed in Athens Clarke County to execute the 17 federal arrest warrants and to execute 15 search warrants related to the investigation. During the January 21st roundup, 15 of the 17 indicted individuals were taken into custody, and an additional 4 individuals were arrested on state charges. An additional individual wanted for the federal indictment charges turned himself in earlier today, and 1 individual remains at large. Those persons arrested and charged federally included Rick Sean, and all of them are Athens residents with the exception of 2, and I will let you know which ones those are, but they included Rick Sean Willingham, who's a 32-year-old black male, Jaquavius Turner, who is also an Athens Clarke County resident, Jamian Huff, a 34-year-old black male Athens resident, Manuel Gonzalez Romero, who is a Hispanic male Athens resident, Stephen Ricole Scott, a 43-year-old Athens resident, Antonio Mitchell, he's a 30-year-old black male Athens resident, Marquez Ward, 31-year-old Borough County resident, Tajaya Forney, a 19-year-old Borough County resident, Christopher Sanders, a 33-year-old black male Athens resident, Bernard Barnett, a 22-year-old black male Athens resident, Marquila Jones, 20-year-old black female Athens resident, Nicholas Jackson, a 26-year-old black male Athens resident, Terrell Bush, a 45-year-old Athens resident, Shadrick Cox, a 24-year-old black male Athens resident, Robert Bolton, a 31-year-old black male Athens resident, and Armand Payne, who's also black male resident of Athens. The remaining suspect is an individual by the name of Andrew Bravo Jimenez. They also call him Droopy, and his pictures will be provided to you so that you have his picture. 16 of the individuals that I just went through have been charged with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute methamphetamine, heroin, and crack cocaine. 10 of those individuals were charged with distribution of cocaine, crack-based cocaine. 8 individuals were charged with possession of firearms in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. 6 individuals were charged with possession with the intent to distribute heroin. 2 individuals are charged with possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine. 1 individual is charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. In addition, those individuals charged on with state charges are Luis Basav Laguines, and that individual is charged in Madison County with trafficking heroin, trafficking methamphetamine, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Zenon Carrier Ferrer is charged in Athens, Clark County with trafficking methamphetamine, trafficking heroin, and possession of marijuana. And then Dwight Moreland is charged with probation violation. Andreas Lane is charged in Madison County with possession with intent to distribute heroin, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and probation violation. Adrian Mapp is charged in Madison County with possession with intent to distribute heroin and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Leonard Jackson is charged in Athens, Clark County with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Evidence seized during Operation Benchwarmer includes but is not limited to 43 firearms, to include 8 assault rifles, more than $84,000 in U.S. currency, more than 8 kilograms of heroin with a street value of $667,000, over 4 pounds of crystal methamphetamine with a street value of $195,000, 26 ounces of crack cocaine with a street value of $78,000, 2.4 pounds of marijuana, 3.3 ounces of cocaine, 94 controlled pharmaceuticals, 40 grams of oxycodone. Operation Benchwarmer represents the largest scale and most successful operation of its kind in the history of the Athens Clarke County Police Department, and sends a clear message that violent criminal offenders will not be tolerated in our communities. The operation also serves as an example of what can be accomplished when federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies come together as partners using specially designed initiatives such as Safe Streets Task Force to remove violent criminal offenders from our street. Athens, Clarke County communities are safer today because of this effort. My colleagues and I will be available to answer questions at the end of the press conference, but now I'd like to turn it over briefly to U.S. Attorney Charles Peeler for a few remarks.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Peeler. I'm the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia. The Middle District of Georgia covers 70 of Georgia's 159 counties. It includes Athens, Clarke County. Athens is the classic city, and there is no room in Athens, Georgia for illegal guns, drugs, and gangs. And this operation represents the very best of what law enforcement can accomplish when federal, state, and local agencies partner with one unified goal, and that is to protect the citizens here in Athens, Clark County. To put this operation in perspective, as the chief mentioned, this is the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in the history of Athens, Clark County, and the results of this are substantial. 17 individuals indicted federally. That indictment was unsealed earlier this week. The charges there range from drug distribution to possession of a firearm in furtherance of a drug crime. 8 kilos of heroin seized as a result of the issuance of 15 federal search warrants. Pounds of methamphetamine, 43 firearms, 8 of those assault rifles, other drugs recovered. This is the type of operation that can make a profound impact in a community. And so my message to criminals is you really have 3 choices. You can either stop what you were doing, you can get caught, or you can leave. Because what this operation represents is a sustained commitment by law enforcement to come together to keep our foot on the gas to make sure that the citizens in Athens, Clark County are safe. This is part of a larger initiative of the Department of Justice designed to reduce violent crime across the country. It's called Project Safe Neighborhoods. Project Safe Neighborhoods functions by bringing together partnerships of federal, state, and local law enforcement, just like this operation, to identify, to target, to arrest, and to prosecute the most violent individuals in the most violent neighborhoods. So you can expect, and the citizens of Athens can expect, and the criminal element can expect, that this represents a sustained commitment to make Athens a better, safer place. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Andy Smith. Andy leads the FBI office that covers Macon and Athens. Andy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Smith, and like Mr. Peeler said, I am the supervisory senior resident agent in the Macon and the Athens offices of the FBI in the Middle District of Georgia. Over the last 2 days, nearly 24 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies came together for Operation Benchwarmers. It was a lot of moving parts, a lot of hard work went into making all of this come together and execute all of these arrests and warrants safely. We can assure the citizens in the Athens area that they are safer today because of Operation Benchwarmers and what all of these partners did on Tuesday. To the FBI, our partnerships are vital in carrying out operations like this so that we can ensure that the citizens of our communities around the state of Georgia, that the FBI is committed to continuing to working aggressively to remove all threats to their safety. I would like to take a moment to talk about, and you've heard a lot of people talk about it now, the Middle Georgia Safe Streets Gang Task Force. And here that's a special partnership that's been started here by the FBI and the DEA. And on the Middle Georgia Safe Streets Gang Task Force, those agencies are that represent the task force are the Athens Clark County Police Department has invested huge in this task force, the Georgia Department of Corrections, the GBI, the FBI, and the DEA. During this operation, in conjunction with the Northeast Regional Drug Task Force, these people on these task forces work tirelessly, 70, 80 plus hours a week for long periods of time. And they made huge sacrifices of themselves and their families, all in the effort to ensure the safety of the citizens of this area. Not enough is said about them, but I promise you a lot of the things you see in the media, a lot of the operations you see, they are involved in some way, some shape, some form. They are to be commended, and I couldn't be prouder of that group of people. Thank you.
So at this time, we will take a few questions. Do bear in mind that although we've concluded this phase of the operation, it continues to be an ongoing investigation, so we may be limited as far as what we can answer. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chief, a few questions. First off, the individuals that were arrested, do you believe that all of them were working together in sort of a drug weapons distribution ring? Do you believe all the weapons, or suspect most of the weapons that you seized were stolen? And how many different locations did you round up all these drugs and weapons?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions there. So all of these individuals were connected in some manner or another. As far as the guns, we believe that some of them were stolen, some of them were not, some of them were purchased legally. And then what was the last question?
Where did you find the drugs and weapons? How many different
The
locations?
specific locations, I don't want to get into that. That's part of the investigation, but at this point, I don't want to go any further on disclosing that information.
One last question. Do you believe any of these drugs are being sold to UGA students?
We believe they're being distributed throughout the Athens region, and that would include UGA students. Yes, sir.
Could you expound on Mr. William's role in this? It looks like he was charged in a lot of different.
Well, while I would say that Willingham is the highest level, leader of that group, I wouldn't want to expand any further on that. Additional details about his involvement and his actions will come out as this case is prosecuted, but I don't want to say or do anything that could be detrimental to the prosecution of the case at this point.
At the same time, I saw Jaquavius Turner also facing 20 of the 39 charges. Was he also a high-ranking, member of whatever was happening?
So nearly all of these people, over 2/3 of the people that have been charged and indicted and arrested, are folks that have an extensive criminal arrest history, and they are considered the most violent and dangerous of those individuals in Athens, Clarke County. So all of them come with extensive records and are considered the most notorious and most violent folks that are operating here in Athens, Clarke County.
This might be a question for the U.S. Attorney's Office. When I was reading through some of the court documents here, it seems like, as you mentioned, extensive criminal histories for some of these individuals. Are we looking at possible life sentences on some of these? I saw that mentioned in one of the court documents.
A lot of that in federal court is driven by the criminal history, and it's specific to each individual. I can say that the charges that have been brought in the indictment, of course, those are just charges, and everyone enjoys in the United States a presumption of innocence unless and until proven guilty. But they do carry significant federal penalties associated with all of those charges.
And I saw some of the individuals described in court documents as possible flight risks. I did see some of them were granted, I think, $15,000 bonds. Do you have worries about some of these individuals being released while they await trial?
Certainly, and I'm not aware of which of the individuals we move for detention on. I can tell you that the distribution of drugs is inherently dangerous. And when you combine the distribution of drugs with possession of firearms, then it becomes even doubly dangerous. And so this is significant conduct. It is a danger to the community as alleged in the indictment.
Mr. Peeler, you mentioned there's no room in Athens for illegal guns, drugs, and gangs. Are these gang members?
I think that will come out during the course of the investigation. I really don't want to comment any more specifically on that particular point.
Like there was a mention of some of these people being from Barrett County and then also Madison County. Any place else outside of Athens that y'all either served warrants or knew that these people were operating?
No, those, and the individuals that lived in Barrow County, they were just across the line, and they operated primarily in the Athens area.
One thing I will add with regard to, sentencing and amount of time in jail is that these are federal charges. And with federal charges, they will serve, whatever that sentence will be, they will serve the entire sentence. So if convicted, they will be off the street for probably the rest of their lives or a very, very long time. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.